Imagine you donate money to bring clean water to a village that has never had it. And the solution you're funding is genuinely clever. A merry-go-round. The kids play on it, spinning it round and round, and that spinning pumps clean water up out of the ground. Children have fun, the village gets water. Everybody wins. It was called the PlayPump, and the world fell in love with it. It won awards. Celebrities backed it. Major institutions poured in tens of millions of dollars to install thousands of them across southern Africa. There was just one problem. To pump enough water for a single village, the children would have had to spin that merry-go-round for about 27 hours. A day. So the playing stopped, and instead, you'd find women, grandmothers, pushing the heavy roundabout by hand in the sun to get water that an ordinary hand pump would have given them faster. No one asked the village what they actually wanted. No one checked whether it lasted. And on papers, on every glossy report, the project was a triumph. But here's the part almost no one talks about. The real failure wasn't the pump. Pumps break. That happens. The failure was that nobody had a serious, agreed-upon way to ask the only question that matters. Did this actually help? And it turns out there is a way. There's a checklist, 6 questions, quietly written by a committee in Paris that you've probably never heard of. 6 questions that today decide how billions of dollars in aid get judged. If you work in monitoring and evaluation, this is the spine of your whole job. So let's actually understand it. To see where these 6 questions came from, you have to go back. After the Second World War, rich countries started sending money, a lot of money in saved, to poorer ones. And for decades, almost nobody seriously asked whether any of it worked. The assumption was simple. We sent help, therefore we helped. By the time that assumption finally cracked, the aid world needed a common language for honesty. So in 1991, a body called the Development Assistance Committee, the DAC, part of the OECD, wrote down 5 criteria for evaluating aid. 5 plain questions. For nearly 30 years, those 5 were the global standard. Then, in 2019, they updated them and added a 6th. We'll come back to why that 6th one matters more than it looks. Now, I didn't really grasp how high the stakes are here until I looked into one country's story. Because the textbook example of hopeless, money-down-the-drain aid, the country donors once quietly called a bottomless pit, was South Korea. In the 1950s after the war, it was one of the poorest places on earth, surviving on foreign aid. And then, within a single lifetime, it didn't just recover. In 2010, South Korea walked into that same committee in Paris and sat down as a donor, the only country in history to go from a major aid recipient to a rule maker, from being measured to helping decide how everyone else gets measured. Hold on to Korea. It's going to matter at the end, because it sat on both sides of this table. But first, what are the 6 questions? Here's the simplest way I've found to hold all 6 in your head at once. Don't think of an auditor. Think of a doctor treating a patient, because every one of these 6 criteria is just a question a good doctor would ask. Question 1, relevance. Are you treating the right disease? It sounds obvious, but this is where the PlayPump died. The village's problem wasn't no fun, it was no water, and we already know how to pump it. Relevance asks, does this intervention actually meet the real needs and priorities of the people it's for? Not the donor's needs, theirs. Question 2, coherence. This is the 2019 newcomer, a doctor's question. Do these new pills clash with the other medicine the patient is already taking? Coherence asks whether your project fits with everything else happening around it. Other donors, the government's own programs, other interventions. Because aid doesn't land in an empty room. A project can be perfect on its own and still cause harm by colliding with the things already there. Question 3, effectiveness. The blunt one. Did the treatment actually work? Did the intervention achieve the objectives it set out to achieve? Not, did we stay busy? Not, did we spend the budget? Did we hit the goal we promised? Question 4, Efficiency. Did the cure cost a fortune or take forever? You can treat the right disease, and the treatment can work. But if it costs 10 times what it should have or arrived 2 years too late, that matters. Efficiency asks whether the results justified the money, the people, and the time it took to get them. Question 5. Impact. Step back from the symptom. Is the patient's whole life better? Impact is the big, higher-level difference the intervention made, including the changes nobody planned for. A literacy program might teach reading. That's effectiveness. But did it change who gets to earn a living in that town? That's impact. And impact includes the bad surprises too, the unintended harm. And question 6, sustainability. The one everyone forgets. Will the patient stay healthy after the doctor goes home? When the funding ends, when the foreign team flies out, do the benefits last? Or does the clinic close, the pump rust, the gains quietly reverse? This is the question the PlayPump never even tried to answer. So there it is. Relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, sustainability. 6 questions. 1 scorecard. Now run the PlayPump back through it. Right disease? No. They wanted water, not a toy. Did it last? No. It rusted and the grandmothers took over. It fails the very first question and the very last one. The framework would have caught it on day 1. So you'd think, problem solved. Use the 6 questions and bad aid disappears. But now, this is where it gets interesting. Because the very thing built to keep aid honest can quietly become the problem. Here's the first trap. When you turn 6 profound questions into a form to fill in, people start filling in the form instead of answering the questions. Evaluators call it, half-jokingly, evaluation theater. A thick, beautifully formatted report. Every box ticked. A confident, satisfactory on all 6. And on the ground, nothing has actually changed. The report isn't a mirror anymore, it's a costume. And here's the deeper trap, the one that catches even honest teams. The 6 criteria fight each other. The most efficient project, cheapest, fastest, is very often the least sustainable, because doing it properly, locally, slowly, costs more. And what a donor finds relevant is not always what the community would have chosen. You cannot win on all 6 at once. Every evaluation is really a set of quiet trade-offs about which questions you let win, which means the framework was never a machine that spits out a verdict. It's a set of lenses, and the honest evaluator's job isn't to score high. It's to be clear about which lens they looked through and what they chose not to see. So, let's step all the way back. Because the real question was never just, did the project work? The real question is, who gets to decide what working even means? 6 criteria written by donors applied to people who were mostly never in the room. That's not a scandal. It's just structure. The people who hold the money tend to hold the definitions. And good mail work is, quietly, an attempt to hand a little of that power back, to measure the things the village would actually care about. And maybe that's why Korea has stuck with me through all of this. It's the one country that sat on both sides of the table. First, the one being judged, then one of the judges. It's living proof the categories aren't destiny. The bottomless pit became the donor, which should make every one of us a little humble about the verdicts we write today. From the evaluations I dug into for this, the pattern was almost always the same. The projects that failed didn't fail because no one cared. They failed because the right questions got asked too late, or not at all. That's really what the L in MEL is for. Not to declare a project dead, but to learn enough that the next one is a little less likely to become a merry-go-round nobody asked for. So here's my question for you. Have you ever seen a project that looked flawless on paper and missed completely on the ground? Which of the 6 criteria did it fail? Tell me in the comments. Those stories are how the rest of us learn. I make these to make meal practical, not painful. I'll see you in the next one.